Hey, it's Mirna from Trainers Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainers Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. Let me share a story with you today. When I was 27, I lived in Amsterdam. At that point, I lived in Amsterdam for around a year and a half, and it was a very happy and exciting period in my life. There was a lot of new discoveries, a lot of new people, amazing city, very international environment, a lot of ways in which I felt like I was thriving and like life was great and exciting. But, always that but, there was also a bit of distress at one element of my life. And that distress came from feeling that I'm in crossroads in many ways and that there are many decisions for me to do. And even if I don't make any decision, that's decision in itself. And I was wondering what to do about many, many things. And I felt like I have no answers. So on one side, there was work. I worked at Cisco at the time. I really liked my job, working as an engineer. It was a lot of learning, amazing company, amazing team, a lot of exciting things. At the same time, I was deeply in love with trainings already. I've been working with trainings in different NGO projects, playing with different ideas for, 3-4 years maybe. And I knew I was very much in love with that side. And I was wondering, should I stay with Cisco? Should I go into training? Should I multitask between the two? How long, if I choose to make that transition, where am I going in my career? On the other hand, it was also a question of location. I was in Amsterdam. I loved Amsterdam. I'm in love in Amsterdam still. I'm there like every year, love exploring it, love spending time in that amazing city. And it felt really exciting to live there, and it was also a very international environment, much more than Zagreb, my hometown, and it provided much better basis for travel, which I was quite excited about at the time. So there were many benefits to staying in Amsterdam. But I was also wondering for how long. And one part of me was also just wondering, when is the end of an adventure if I'm not planning to stay in Amsterdam forever? What is reasonable time to stay there? Where am I just, staying by default, and when am I consciously deciding to stay and still, getting the most out of that adventure? And at the same time, I was always very passionate about sailing and scuba diving and horse riding and hiking and spending a lot of time in nature and the amazing seaside like the one we have in Croatia. And from Zagreb, it was all very achievable in this area. And I loved doing and spending a lot of time engaging with all these activities. And now being in Amsterdam for a year and a half already, I kind of started missing it. And I wanted more of it in my life. And in Amsterdam, it all would exist, but it wouldn't exactly be as nice as at home. It was different. So staying in Amsterdam kind of meant parking this a little bit, or maybe catching some opportunities to do it, but much less than I would have in Croatia. And then I was also in a relationship. And it was really nice relationship, and I enjoyed the time there. And at the same time, I felt like it had no future. And the question was again, should you stay with something that has no future? Is it about now? Is it about where is this leading, right? So there was a lot of dilemmas, as you can imagine. Like up to level, what am I doing with my life and what is actually really important to me? And it felt like all of these have mutually exclusive options, or you do Cisco or you do training, or you stay in Amsterdam or you do horses, diving, sailing and so on, or you stay in this relationship or there were many decisions to be made. So I did the thing that any reasonable millennial at the time would do when faced with a decision. I went to travel. No. So I did a solo trip to Australia for 5 weeks, one of the longest solo trips for me at the time. Later that escalated, but at that time it was one of the longest ones. And I landed in Melbourne initially. And one of my first destinations from Melbourne was a place called Great Ocean Road and 12 Apostles. And maybe you know about this place. If not, you should definitely look it up. It's gorgeous. It's this piece of the road that is following the coastline. and it has 12 big cliffs or kind of peaks, pinnacles that extend straight from the water and provide some amazing views. Well, apparently now they're called like 9 piglets or something like that, got degraded from 12 apostles because erosion removed some of them. But at the time, 12 apostles, gorgeous views. And I really wanted to see that. And within my first days, I went there and just kind of traveled around, had some, time spending around 12 apostles. And I spent a night in a place called Apollo Bay. And Apollo Bay is this small, the most holiday village you can imagine. So like very holiday, like just, small apartments and hotels, really long beach and nothing going on except people coming for holidays. And it didn't feel like a place where you would have much to experience, but that felt great for me because it felt like it's providing me space to actually think and kind of get grounded and land in this new destination and kickstart this journey. So on the next day, before leaving Apollo Bay, because I only spent one night there, I went for a really nice walk. And I climbed a hill, and from that hill there was this gorgeous view of the long half moon Apollo Bay beach. I can actually show you the picture if you're following me on video. And it was this long stretch in the shape of half moon of a really, really long piece of a beach. And it sounds like just a beautiful view. But in that moment for me, it really somehow clicked. It really somehow computed. And I realized that this beach is exactly how I should be looking at my life, the timeline of my life. And I somehow realized that this long stretch, long curvy stretch that is ahead of me, it's really like a timeline of my life, and that I can place all the things that I wish to live, that I wish to do, that I wish to learn, that I wish to experience, that they all have their place. But their place is not in parallel, all of them together, clashing between themselves, like sailing or Amsterdam. But they're a matter of stretching them on that timeline and finding a perfect place for each of them. And that gave me a thought that I don't need to make a decision for my life. What am I doing with everything? I just need to make a decision of what is it right now? Where is the next year? And what else do I want to make sure that it's somewhere down the line on the timeline and that it doesn't slip away? And while this feels like a very simple insight, ultimately what it gave me, it gave me sense of how everything works together and how I can truly relax in the experience of my life because there is space and time for everything. It offloaded the pressure. It just made me that sense of freedom. And as that, it provided the ideal first step into the first day of Australia journey. Now, that story, it wasn't like the best story you've ever heard. It was like very average, easygoing, spontaneous, not overthought, not over-designed, not overly well told, to be very frank with myself. It wasn't the most amazing story, but I would think it still engaged you to a certain level, right? It's still kind of, you went along with it. You were there with me on that beach, and you were there with me in those struggles and dilemmas, and it gave you some insights. And that is exactly the power of storytelling. You can think of storytelling literally like honey for our brain, It's something that's sticky and our brain loves it and wants to go there. And as such is one of the super powerful tools that we can use in different contexts and different environments. And for us as trainers, it's a superpower and a great tool we can use within training. And there are many reasons why stories are relevant for trainers. I will share some of them a bit on the brain-based side. And I will also share what are some of the main challenges for us as trainers when wanting to build a new story and how to resolve some of those challenges. Some of those I'll leave for next podcast or video, but some of them we'll resolve today together as well. Now, you can start by thinking a little bit about the story I just told. How could I use that story in a training? It should not be a story that's just a story, oh, this is about me, let's get to know. I went to Australia and had an insight there. No, but I could use it for many, many purposes to highlight certain content or certain process in the training. For example, one of the topics that I often talk about is the one about creating and designing meaningful, memorable moments into a session. We talk about it on advanced facilitation training. We talk about it in Trainers Conversations community. So it's one of the topics I play with often. And I think this one of the elements of creating magical, meaningful moment is to create a moment of insight. And I could totally use this story to demonstrate what does moment of insight, the sensation of having a moment of insight, what does it mean? And then we could move from there to discuss how could we create such moments for others? What are the elements that led to insight and so on? So this could be for this very specific content. But it could also be more general. I could take it as this story about how putting yourself in a different perspective, physically, but also mentally, or also into different environment, can provide us a completely different view of a challenge or event ahead of us, right? So I could also play with that when I talk about mindset maybe, or when we talk about creativity or innovation or even clarity of our thinking and similar things. I could also talk about how ideas actually need time to mature. This insight, I didn't get it in Amsterdam, not just because I was in Amsterdam, not in Australia, but I also didn't get it because I wasn't ready for it in some way. It needed some time to mature and compute. So when talking about innovation, about giving things time and space, I could also use this as one of the examples. I could also tell it in much shorter version for that. I think in workshop probably I would. Here I wanted to play with it a bit also to see what was more engaging for you. You can also play with it and analyze it a bit. So you get some of your own also insights about the story. But these are some of the examples of how I could use this story in training. But why would I use stories in training? Why are stories in training and for trainers actually important? I'm giving you 5 reasons here, although there could be much more, many more. One of them is, through storytelling, we actually build a bit of emotional connection with our participants and with our audience. So they relate to us more, they get to know us a little bit more, they step in our shoes a little bit more, and through that we can actually connect a bit more. That's why we can use stories as trainers to actually build that towards the participants, but we can also use it as one of the tools within the training to build more of that connection. For example, is one of the things we use a lot in the method called appreciative inquiry. Maybe there will be a podcast eventually about it. Let me know if you would like it. You can let me know via LinkedIn or by replying to any of the newsletters. But in appreciative inquiry, storytelling is one of the powerful things to build emotion that lead towards change and to build motivation that leads toward change, and also connection between the group and between the participants. But then stories also make things much more memorable. We remember of stories so much better than just of random facts and ideas. They're really sticky for our brain. For this, it is really important that they're well plugged into the context of learning, and that the story is not just memorable as a story in itself, but it actually serves the insight and serves the learning process and the learning bit. Now, if that sounds challenging, how to make it actually serve learning, you might want to join me also on Storytelling Advanced Training. It's a 2-day live training in which we're exploring deeply many shades of storytelling for trainers and facilitators, also how to build stories and why, and tips and tricks and many experiences. But ultimately we're also exploring how to make stories serve learning and not just having engaging stories on their own. And number 3, by the way, you have all of these in the handout as well. You can download it in the podcast description. There is a link to download it. Reason number 3 why storytelling matters is because it can help us to explain complex ideas in a simple way. If we find the right story to match some complex framework or complex idea, it makes it much more digestible, much easier for participants. Now, it is hard to find the right story in this case, but I will share some tips on that in a bit in this same episode. But ultimately, it can really help us simplify and untangle our participants' brain from complex concepts. And then reason number 4 out of 5 is also that storytelling invites for a lot of empathy. And when people listen to stories, often they will get into participants' shoes. They will walk into the character's shoes. They will walk into the storyteller's shoes. So I hope you experience that a little bit also in my story, that you put yourself in my position of Amsterdam being exciting, of me being confused about decisions and challenge, crossroads ahead of me, and so on and so on. So in some way, I hope you experience that. But ultimately, why we want participants to experience that is because through that, in a way, they're actually getting an experience. Of course, the most powerful learning is always when we can give them direct experience and we can actually take them to do something and experience something directly. But in cases we can't fully do that, storytelling is one of the best replacements because it kind of gives them the experience through the eyes of the character or through the shoes of the character. So it kind of strengthens that experiential learning component. And then, of course, I didn't even mention it's very engaging and it can really appeal to our curiosity. But as trainers, we want to use it in workshops, but we might also want to use it in our marketing, in our bios, in the description of what facilitation is when we talk about it externally, in how we describe our own life story towards our audience. And this can be really, really helpful to also extend our impact by attracting more people to our workshops. And while that's not the primary angle from which I'm looking at it today, it is an important angle as well. And it is where storytelling can really extend our impact a little bit. So the question could be now, why don't we all use stories all the time? They're amazing. They create a lot of engagement, a lot of impact. Everybody loves them. Everybody knows that everybody loves them. So why aren't we using them more? Are you using them enough? I know I'm never using them enough. There can always be more and better. And here are the 2 ultimate reasons that I recognize why trainers don't really use stories enough. One of them, they say, I just don't know where to find the right story. And the second one is, I don't really know how to build or construct a good story. And to be fair, there could be more challenges to this. There could be also a bit of challenge of our confidence in telling a story, of feeling like we're taking too much space and too much of a stage while we're taking a story, of feeling like we don't really want to share something that's personal, if it's a personal story, and so on and so on. So there is a lot of emotional baggage there to unpack as well. We are unpacking it on a storytelling advanced training, but here in 20-30 minute episode, I will not manage to unpack all of that. But ultimately, all these confidence issues and emotional issues also lead us to use these 2 big challenges also as an excuse and to keep saying, hey, I really don't know where to find a good story, so I will not use one. Or I don't really know how to build a good story, so I will not use one. Or find an idea for a story. And that is why I think that if we also tackle these 2 challenges and if we learn more ways to find the good stories and more ways of building a good stories, that will also enable us to actually stop using it as an excuse and to maybe challenge yourself a little bit more. That is why today I'm sharing more about how to find a good story. I will share 3 specific tips or tools. And then in next podcast episode, I will talk about how to build a good story. What is the thing you want to keep in mind? What is the thing you want to develop? So do subscribe if you want to keep an eye for the next episode, or sign up for Trainers Toolbox newsletter. I'll share it there as well. The sign up is in the description. And if you want to dive really much deeper into this, also consider joining me on storytelling advanced training. I'll also link it into the description. It's going to be super exciting, super engaging, super enjoyable. In 2025, I'm delivering it in November in Zagreb. In 2026, I'm planning it for different locations in Europe. So also get in touch if you would love to join, but not sure where and when, and whisper some options into my ear and I might make it happen. So now, how can we find a good story? I think the first question is, do we want to look for stories that are only our stories from our life? Or do we want to also look for more like universal stories, different books or libraries or ideas? Or maybe even use ChatGPT to help us invent one. But today, in the 3 tips, I want to focus more on the first one, finding stories in our own life and in our own experience. Because I feel like these stories often can be more powerful. They are more vulnerable, they're more difficult to tell, there is more emotional baggage coming with them, but ultimately they're also more powerful because we're bringing in something truly personal and we're bringing in truly our experience. And with that, we create completely different emotional connection and connection with the story we are telling than if we just retell somebody else's story. So in this, that's not to say we shouldn't be telling different stories, by all means go for it. But today I want to focus a little bit more on where do we find them in our own life. And the first tip is actually really simple and really difficult. And that is to just sit down and reflect on stories in our life. But this doesn't work really well if you just sit down and reflect now on what are all the different stories that I had in my life. Not a lot will come up. It's much better if you can capture it as you go. So I would recommend to be brave and commit to a little challenge. And the challenge is for 30 days, each evening, to just write a couple of words about one event from that day that could make a good story. I know. No, it is not easy, but it will give you a huge amount of ideas, and it will also get older stories from all the different aspects of your life to keep re-emerging, and you will just connect with them more and you'll be getting more ideas. So please, 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 if you feel like you want to be telling more stories in your training, but you don't know where to find them, try this challenge out. Try it out for a week, then choose to extend it or commit to a full month. The point is not to write the whole story each evening. The point is just to capture a couple of quick ideas, a couple of quick thoughts about one event of that day. That way you will have a reminder of that story and that event as an option, and you will still be able to build a story from your memory if you ever choose to use it. And then at the end of that month, you could take just 10 minutes, 20 minutes to go through that list and maybe pick 3 stories that would make a good story for one of your workshops. And then these 3 you can actually develop into a story a little bit. So the best resource to pick up stories from is our own life. But the challenge with that is that the best stories actually happen in everyday moments. You can imagine the story I told about Australia was not the biggest nor the most exciting thing that happened in 5 weeks traveling all around Australia. There were many events, many exciting things. But I still remember that story because it had some significant learning for me. And I chose it because it meant something, even though it wasn't a big and dramatic event. And I want to invite you to think from the same perspective. Stories that I can find in my everyday life, can I pick them not on the basis of how big and dramatic they were? Can I look into the everyday and still find a mini stories that had some significance for me, that gave me an insight, that were a moment when something changed for me or opened up? And these everyday stories, these are the powerful ones. Much more than the big drama, which is big event, but then it's so big that overshadows the learning in it, right? So we want to make sure that the event is supporting the insight, not overshadowing it. That was the tip number 1. Tip number 2 is an amazing tool I want to share with you. And it's called First, Last, Best, and Worst. And this tool is coming from a book, Storyworthy, by Matthew Dix, and it's a really good book. I would recommend checking it out if you're interested in storytelling. It's one of 10 books we will be also touching on and playing with and exploring in advanced storytelling training. Just one of many. But it has several practical exercises, and this is one of the, for me, most valuable one because it's also one of the fairly easy ones, yet it can give you really cool insights. And this is how it works. You basically create a little table, and in each column of the table, you give it basically 4 columns. One is called first, one is called last, one is called best, and one is called worst. And then in different rows of that table, you choose different prompts. And prompts can be a very random thing. I'm sharing with you today the prompts that are some of the examples from the book, but you could also customize them. You should customize them and throw in that many different prompts. So some of his prompts were kiss, job, apartment, vacation, and gift. And there were many more, by the way, in the book. And you could use different prompts instead, such as workshop, difficult participant, I don't know, miscommunication, a fight, whatever. Depends on the topic you work with. You might take some prompt that's related to it, or you might make it more creative, like tree, or date, or park, or whatever, right? Or conversation, or something like that. And then how you use it is basically that in each row, so let's say for kiss, you write what was your first kiss, what was your last kiss, what was your best kiss, and what was your worst kiss. And again, you don't develop a story here for now, you just write a couple of main keywords related to each of these 4 categories for each prompt. And then you do that for at least 5 or ideally 10 very different prompts. And basically you get here something down the line of, 20 or even many more, 40 ideas. And then you go through that list and you just circle down those ideas that actually seem story-worthy, that actually seem like an idea that you could totally be developing into a story. So you choose maybe, you circle any idea that's good, and then you choose maybe 2 or 3 to develop for a workshop. You could do this exercise just to train your story muscle and just do it a little bit in general and see which kind of stories you discover that you can add to your repository of stories for future workshops. Or for us as trainers and facilitators, you could also do it in much more targeted way. Meaning, you could do it in a way that you really developed prompts for a specific workshop that you're working with, decision or whatever, mistake, or like whatever different prompts could be that are related to the topic you're delivering. So I would invite you to play with this one. It won't take a lot of time. It would like maybe 15 to 20 minutes for 5 prompts. I would say more 15 than 20. And then another maybe 10 to develop maybe 2 or 3 stories out of it. Yet it will just give you a feeling that stories are easy to find. And it will give you many ideas for your story repository. And again, you can download this in HANDOUT as well. And the third tip is also to just expose yourself to more stories. And it's really cool if you just grab some books. Like I can recommend the book Let Me Tell You a Story by Jorge Bucay. Really, really cool book with many ideas for stories. But there are many other, storytelling books. And you can expose yourself also to different movies and novels. And just always when exposing to some, take a moment to reflect, what did you like about that story? Yet probably the most powerful way of exposing to different stories is if you can expose to different stories by other trainers. So try to gather some trainers together, do a little meetup and exchange some stories and get some inspiration from them. Each can share one story that you use in training, and from there you can really, see where it develops and get some ideas of things that you wouldn't even consider using because they seem so simple or everyday, and in reality they give a really good insight. The book Storyworthy is really nice for some examples and tips as well. And we did such an exchange, and we'll still be doing it, of different stories and also of different metaphors in the Trainers Conversations community. So if you want to, join a community in which you can actually do such experiments and exercises year-round, do check it out. The gate opens in November for Trainers Conversations community for a whole year of 2026. So you can already sign up for a waiting list. I kind of hope and expect it will almost fill up through the waiting list. So if you're considering it, do sign up for a waiting list. You will have an early access to the community. And you might want to join us there for these conversations and these stories. And if you want to dive in deep into storytelling, or join me in November in Zagreb for the Storytelling Advanced Training, I cannot wait for this one. It will be so exciting. There is so much we can explore in 2 full days. There is so deep we can go. Imagine how much we covered now in just half an hour, and then map that to 2 full days. There is so much to play with in a small group of 8 plus me trainers. And I'm still considering locations for next year, looking into London, maybe Amsterdam, but still very open to different European locations. So also get in touch early, the sooner the better, if you want to know options and if you want to propose, where should I do it? No, invite me and I might actually do it there. Now, I do want to remind you of 3 main tips I shared. One of them was to just for a month note down one event every day and then develop some stories out of it. One was the first best, worst last. And one was also exchanging stories more with trainers. Now, in one of the next podcast episodes, I cannot wait for that one, I'm diving into also how to create a good story. Now, half an hour will not be a lot of time to explore that, but I will see how can I pack some really innovative tips and tools that will really help you to build and construct some cool stories. I hope I'll see you there, and remember to subscribe to make sure you see when that episode is out. Wish you a great day. And maybe I can challenge you a bit to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to start thinking of one story you can use in your trainings already now, and to open those muscles, warm up a little bit those muscles of your own storytelling in workshops and in training. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice. But then they make all the difference. If you enjoy Trainers Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.